All right, guys. So in this session, this is a rule-based session basically where we want to understand certain rules which are very critical and very important in Pega. Okay, very important. And where do we use them? How do we use them? And what are the various actions that we can implement using those rules? The first rule that we want to discuss is data transform. Data transform, as the name it suggests, basically this is a transformational rule. This is a rule basically that you leverage to copy the data from one place to another place. That's one uses. From one place, from source to destination or one place to another. That's one rule. Transform the data. Transform the data means that, for example, let's say that we need to read the data from a data page, and on the data page, because it is coming from a different object, the first name is defined as fn, right? And I need to put that value you after reading from the data page to a property, and that is first name. So you can do this kind of mapping as well. So transformation of the data, running some calculation, expression, evaluation. We can do that expression evaluation and setting up the value of result, right? So pretty much basically operating on the data, right? Copy, paste, copying it, pasting it there, transforming this, concatenating the data. For example, we want to produce full name. Full name is going to be from first name and last name, right? First name plus last name, that's full name. Things like that. Data transform are very critical, very critical. Every project will definitely have data transform. First of all, when you execute a case type, so when you execute the case type, Pega gives you a data transform called py default. Py default data transform it is called basically by Pega during the case creation. When your case gets created or when you're creating a case, the py default data transform will be called, right, during the case creation. And when you see the first screen, this data transform will already be applied on your case. This is used for setting up or initializing some values, any value, basically initializing any required value, some values on your case before the case is presented to the user. So it can have wide variety of thing. For example, you might want to call an integration, get the create users manager name and have it already populated on the case as the create users manager, right? So before the case first screen is displayed, the user manager is retrieved from a different system and that is set on the case. So these kind of thing. This py default called something called py set field default. This we have used. So this is called by the py default. Pega is configured to call py default. Py default called py set field default. This is for initializing certain properties, especially initialization. You guys probably remember that how we initialize customer property and all that when we were using the property to display the section. So you can find that Pega automatically sets that up, these data transform at the beginning. Okay. So py set field default. This is called by the Pega case creation process. And this data transform does it calls another data transform. See, apply data transform set field default, and that's where we were initializing certain values. There's one interesting thing about the data transform or anything, okay? In any case, When you execute a case type, the case type has a class. The class is, for example, CC application. That's where is the class of your this case type, right? When you are executing this case type, the class is this. This is the class. So Pega execute the py default from this class. Py set field default from the this class. Most recent, most important class is chosen. Okay, most relevant. But what I want to explain is superclass, calling the superclass data transform. That is very important to understand in Pega. Okay. So if you look at the class, basically class you can find on the py work page. That's what the work object is. This is the class. See, pxobj class. That's the property that holds the class. You might have seen something called call superclass data transform. What does that mean? Py default is actually created in every class. You can create it in every class, and whenever you are going to create an instance of that class, the py default will be called. Even in the data class, you created the customer data class, you want to initialize something, maybe organization name to B4B. You can create a py default data transform in that and set organization name to B4B. Every customer you will create, B4B will automatically be set up. So py default is automatically executed when you create a instance of the class. Please note this down. Very important concept. A lot of people miss that. Py default is automatically executed by Pega when an instance of the relevant class is created. Okay? Once you create, remember only when you create, not when you modify, right? So call this is setting that is available in the data transform. Call superclass data transform. That means that it will call the class from it will call the data transform from this class, but will also call the data transform for all the parent classes as well, from the work, from the ccms, from the b4b. Or you can see the inheritance. Right click on the case and you click on the inheritance. You can see from where all the classes it is inheriting. It is inheriting from this up to this. So in the process, wherever it finds the py default data transform, it will call it. Of course, the first setting, this one is going to just call the its parent data class data transform with the same name. Name should be same. Then if this is enabled on the parent data transform, then it will call that parent's parent data transform as well. So if you click on here, it will open the superclass data transform as well. So work cover, we do not have the py default anywhere in work class, ccms class, b4b. That's why it opened directly the wherever it found the py default data transform, it opened the work class. But if I create a data transform into, let's say, work class, just for the testing purpose, and store it in the work class, and I by default it is enabled. Okay, so I'm going to just set a comment here. Comment is not executable thing. Okay, this is just for the rules readability purpose. Now if I click on the open call super data transform, it opened the, sorry, it's not set field default. Okay, I think super class. 1 second. This is the one that I created. It is calling the work class. 1 minute. So see, it opened the work class, right? So next superclass is work class. That's where it found, and it finds that superclass data transform. Then it will, if it is unchecked here, so it will stop. It will not call any other data transform, py default data transform from any other class. But if it is checked, then it will go to find the next superclass, right? Wherever it finds, then it will call find the next one. So this is how it is executed until it gets to the base class. See, a lot of properties are being set automatically. Create username and all those things gets created. Remember, on the case when you create the case, these properties are automatically set. See, these are all being set from some of the data class. Base class is the most lower level data class. After that, there is no class, so you will not find anything. That's very interesting thing about the data transform, and especially the py default data transform. It will continue, but what's the execution? See, the first execution will happen from the superclass, the ultimate superclass that will be executed first. Okay, so the base class, so we have several. So first of all, the base class will be executed. Whatever value it has set, that's set first. Then this will be executed. Then this, and then finally the implementation class, the final class. So you can override certain values as well. If you want to change the value of create operator ID based on your requirement, you can override that into the relevant section. But first, this value will be set, and later it will be overridden by this. So the hierarchy is that from the base class towards your implementation class, that's how the data transform gets executed. So when you execute the case, Pega first finds this data transform, but it doesn't execute it. It finds its superclass. Okay, it checks there is a class superclass here too. Then it goes and finds the, doesn't execute it either. Goes in there, finds the work cover. Then it again sees that okay, superclass is selected. Go back. Let's go and find the superclass. Then again superclass. Yes. Then again superclass. Oh, there isn't any superclass. Then start executing. Execute this one. Done. All right. 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 Execute this one. And that's when the data transform execution is completed. So that's about call superclass data transform. Very important concept. All right. So this is one thing, right? One place from where the data transform is called. Next, let's see the data transform call, where actually all we can call the data transform. So you can call the data transform. Suppose from the case, you can call it from flow action. Flow action, post and pre sections. Pre and post action section. There are right option to call it. You can call it on flow connector. You can call it from action, but action on any control. You remember the we called we called determine set reset customer when we were basically when the user was selecting yes or no, we were generating on the change of this, we are calling a data transform to generate or regenerate customer ID. So you can call it from to any control. You can call it from another data transform. We call it DT. Okay. So if I use DT term, just understand that that is data transform. So here we are calling it from another. You can call it from data from data page as source. You remember source or response, request response, DT, right? And several others and so on. Okay, you will learn as you learn Pega. Very critical rule. Okay, on any flow, basically, if you open your flows, for example, CC review, here too, between two processes, if you want to execute a data transform, you can call it on the connector as well. See, you can set some values or apply a data transform. That's where you all can also call it. Okay. With that note, we kind of now understand what the data transform is, why it is used, how does the py default works, and this is true for every data transform. Set field default as well, that also kind of works on the call superclass data transform model. Everything all the data transforms support this feature. We also learned that py default is when it is automatically executed and all that, and data transform calls, basically the common calls, very important calls where we usually call it. We call it from the activity rule. There are several rules basically where we can call the data transform. We haven't learned all the rules. We will continue to learn them and we will see the uses of that. Now let's try to understand the actions in data transform. Very simple to understand. I'm going to start with the py default. That's when I'm going to explain you guys, right? We have used set method is very important. Set is used to initialize some value. So for example, though we are not using the customer in our case right now, but if you want to initialize some value on the customer, we did it already in the py set field default, right? So we just choose the property and set the value. The value can be set like this, or you can also set it like, for example, I want to derive first name customer dot py full name. Do I have it? Not here. Let's say we don't have that property. Okay, but if we want to derive full name, so you can run an expression builder here as well. Say customer dot first name plus you want to introduce a space, then plus customer dot last name. So you can run these kind of expression as well. You can run functions as well. So these are the things you can run while setting up the value. Okay, you can test it. See, right? So these kind of things you do with the set. You set the value of a property. Then you have remove. If you want to remove a value from the clipboard, so for example, I need to remove the py note value on the customer page. You can call remove. Update page is to update a page structure. Remember, customer is a page. I directly set the py note using set, but I can do it one by one for every property. So I can just choose update the customer page. So you will see only page type things. Okay, page and page list. So update customer. You can use another value. Maybe we are running the data page, right? Let me show you. That's very interesting. Okay, so I'm going to update the customer record. I'm going to, this is fine, update the customer record based on, not here. Okay, I will not do it here because it will execute before the customer id is inserted. So we are calling another data transform somewhere. Set reset customer ID, we are doing it, right? Let's say that not here to determine set field default. Okay, let me open the flow quickly. So create form default when you have selected, let me call a data transform here. View properties, sorry, the flow action, on the flow action. When you have selected, when you have given the basically determine reviewer, I'm calling already. Okay, so I can use this one, determine reviewer. Here, if you say new customer, yes, then because we don't have the customer data, let's leave it. But when the new customer is no, then I can update the page customer as well at the same time. Of course, the data page will be fetching up the data. Update the page customer. Now, remember, this is no, new customer no. That means the customer exists. The customer exists. When the customer exists, that means that we can fetch the customer data because we have the customer ID by now, right? So we can use this data page that we created earlier to get the customer information based on the customer ID, right? So I can call this data transform. So I will initialize the customer property with the values from this data page. The data page need to have the parameter CID and the value is going to be from the cust ID. So this is this will fetch the customer record and I can update the customer property one by one with everything that is there on the data page. So this will act as a source, this will act as a definition or sorry, destination. I can add the first name, and you can map all the values. I will just map two values. So when what happened does not take CID. Oh, sorry, the parameter name is cust ID. So this is the one. All right. So when I execute this, I say no, then only that will be executed and C001. So this time when you move away from this data transform determine will run. It will load the value from this data page and put the value CID and first name into the customer property as well. Let's see. Clipboard. See, these two values are initialized. Also, one interesting thing, remember this data page is going to load the data of the customer class and the customer property that we have is also of the same class. So when you have source and destination from the same class actually, no difference. So even if it is a page property, you can directly set it. Set page to page if the class is same. So every property of this page will be set on this page because these are of the same classes. Let me demo that as well. So you can use set in this case as well. If class is same. Go to the clipboard. See all the properties exactly as from the data page. Those are automatically set. So this is a good thing basically when you have the objects of basically same object, same type of object, and you want to set reset because if their class is same, that means the properties that they are using is same. So Pega automatically maps them, right? So this is about the set and update page. Apply data transform is to call another data transform. Sort is used to sort a page list value based on certain property. You need to specify the property. So for example, approver list, you want to sort the list based on the first name. So you select that basically property, and then you select ascending or descending. We have only customers, so here you need to select the approver list, right? That is a list, right? There will be more than one approver, and you can basically just use whatever property you want to use to sort it. So it's just a sorting thing. First name, ascending or descending order, right? That's sort. Comment is non-executable. This is just for our reference, developers reference. We put some comment. When we have already used, you can call a when rule here, or you can specify like this, an expression. So this is when, and when otherwise, and otherwise when we have already seen. The another interesting thing is append to. Append to is used to append into a page list, a new page. Okay, you can append a new page. So for example, I'm going to create approver. Okay, approver list, I can create append a new page. So it will be a new blank page that will be appended. You can append an existing page where you will have to provide which page you want to append. Class should be same. Current source page, so wherever you are looping it, if you are looping it somewhere, you can basically current page you can append there, or you can append multiple page from another page list. So you can copy the pages from one page list to another page list by using append to. Append to and map is similar, but here you get an opportunity to specify the values. So for example, even if a new page, you will have to specify which values to map on the page that you are appending, right? And where you get the values from. Otherwise everything is same. You need to map the property to property there. For each page in is a loop where you have to provide a page list property, and it will loop on that page, and internally you can do whatever you want to do on every page one. For example, I want to execute it on the customer list, and for every customer I want to set the full name equal to first name and last name. So I will just do for each page and run it. First name plus last name. I mean, I'm not using the property relatively, I'm just giving you the example. All right. So that's where we loop using up for each page in. Exit for each. For example, let's say that you were looping on a page list and looking for a customer named Mahesh. When you got the customer named Mahesh, you might want to exit from that loop. You do not want to loop any further. So this is where you use. So when you get that, you let's say that you were setting, you were checking if when name equal to Mahesh. When you got this, just exit. Otherwise, continue looping, right? So you can have embedded that as that way as well. So that's what we use. Exit for each is for exiting from the loop. So this loop will stop and control will return to the next parallel statement. And then exit data transform. In certain situation, you do not want to continue the rest of execution. You want to just exit from the data transform. That's where we use exit data transform method. All right. So that's these are the actions, basically a very few, not a lot, but very important ones. Okay, data transform actions. So in this session we learned about all these actions. We kind of had a look at all those actions, and we understood the scenario where we should ideally be calling those actions and how we can leverage them. We also saw some copying over the data using a data transform, right? We copied the data from data page to a property. So you also know how to reference the data pages basically into another rules. One rule, of course, we learned is data transform. The data page can also be called from activities. Another thing, the next topic that we are going to cover is activity. Learn about the activity, and then we will learn about the OBJ method of the activity, object methods basically, which is very important for us. Along with that, of course, we will learn some basic like property set and all those other methods as well. So I will keep this session limited to the data transform only. In the next session, we will discuss the activity.